I'm Travis Wayne Goodsell, and before I present the video I have already made, I have gotten permission from Difficult Research. That's the YouTube channel name. You'll recognize it by cult and search being all caps. She's updating us on everything that's going on with the Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow cases up in Idaho. And you can go to that channel and request this band from her. So, hats off to her efforts in this matter. All right, let's proceed. Difficult Research.
We choose those to whom we will turn for truth and guidance. The voices and pressures of the world are engaging and numerous, but too many voices are deceptive, seductive, and can pull us off the covenant path. To avoid the inevitable heartbreak that follows, I plead with you today to counter the lure of the world by making time for the Lord in your life each and every day. If most of the information you get comes from social or other media, your ability to hear the whisperings of the Spirit will be diminished. If you are not also seeking the Lord through daily prayer and gospel study, you leave yourself vulnerable to philosophies that may be intriguing, but are not true. Even saints who are otherwise faithful can be derailed by the steady beat of Babylon's band.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. Rough morning. The fruits keep sprouting from my bombshell administration correction video of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I woke up this morning with part 3. No known corrections needed for this one. This is additional information to fill in the overall picture of the corruption that is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They're talking about copycat terrorists, just like the Texas synagogue. There is no such thing as copycat terrorists for this kind of an act. It's embedded into the mindset of all white supremacist Christians, fundamentalist Christians. They justify their hate by making the claim that Jews murdered Jesus, created by Constantine in 325 CE at the Council of Nicaea with the Nicene Creed, which was hundreds of years after the supposed event that Constantine turned into history. It is important to have correct church history, accurate church history, complete and full church history, so that the membership, whether it be Christian, Islam, or Mormon, don't pull any kind of holy war stunt due to misinformation. Because Constantine created Jesus as historical, it's an anachronism to impose Constantine's Jesus upon what's now known as the Gospels, rather than other stories called apocalyptic literature. And so the Jews didn't murder anybody. And so the claim is false. It is just for the sole purpose of justifying their hate crimes. The state of Utah was founded January 4th, 1896. That's when it became an official state in the Union. Unless Wikipedia is wrong. And it's hard to tell because nobody in Utah recognizes Utah becoming a state in the Union. Nobody. Not even the government leaders. It's because in Utah, they don't recognize the authority of the United States of America. And so the day that is celebrated replaces the one that was on Monday. Yeah, Monday, the 17th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. See how this all fits in? It's the days of 47, specifically July 24th. If you were to ask a Mormon when Utah became a state in the Union, they would say, oh, July 24th, 1847. That's when Brigham Young established the state of Utah. He wanted to call it the state of Deseret, but a person beat them to Congress in that year. See what misinformation and disinformation can lead to? Mormon myths. The extra information that I found is that the Edmunds-Tucker Act, named after the congressman who developed it, was preceded by the Edmunds Act, separate from the Edmunds-Tucker Act that shut down the church. The Edmunds Act was in 1882, and that was apparently solely for the stopping of polygamy. And so maybe I do need to make a correction, because the Edmunds-Tucker Act was stopping the practice of tithing being used to grant citizenship to Mormon converts coming from Europe. White Europe. That plays into where we're going with this. It plays into the racism of the church and of Brigham Young. But it also plays into fulfillment of prophecy of the latter days. which is what I found last night. And so, as I will have put in the front of this video, all of the family portraits, the leadership portraits of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, founded by Brigham Young, concerning their being arrested in 1882. Let's get that number correct. I downloaded the John Taylor page to refer to it. Oh, papi. All right. It's under church president. And isn't it interesting how he wrote a poor wayfaring man of grief, as Joseph Smith is said by him to have wanted it sung. Murdered Hiram. Can't believe a damn thing you say. Anyway, they mislead us on Wikipedia when they say following Brigham Young's death. Well, no, they don't. They put it in. It's in the following sentence. Following Brigham Young's death in 1877, quorum of the 12 apostles governed the church, with John Taylor as the quorum president. John Taylor became the third president of the church in 1880. So that's what I had to correct in yesterday's video. It's really bugging me. Why are you not cooperating today? So Joseph F. Smith and George Q. Cannon were his counselors. George Q. Cannon, being the nephew of his wife, Leonora. As church president, Taylor oversaw the further expansion of the Salt Lake community, further organization of church hierarchy, establishing Mormon colonies in Wyoming, Colorado, Arizona, as well as McGrath and Raymond and Spring Coulee, or is that the border? That's the border. And other places in Canada's Northwest Territories, now in Alberta. The first wife I had took me to Alberta, in McGrath, where she's from, being a dual citizen because her Mormon parents met at BYU, had sex and babies to give them dual citizenship. She's the mother, is American. Her dad is Canadian. And so, interesting thing, when John Taylor sent the Canadian Mormons, or the Mormons, to take over Canada, Lethbridge was not happy with this, and actually created a law banning Mormons from Lethbridge. And they had to be banned a certain number of kilometers, as they don't do the feet thing. And I don't know the history of kilometers when that was first invented, but they didn't do no feet thing. It's French, I guess. I would buy at the stores products that had both English and French on them. So a Canadian grows up learning French as a child. But that's why the Mormon settlers have pocket cities or townships around Lethbridge because of that. And now they're connected by roads that are a lot of fun in a tiny little Dodge stick shift. That was her car. That during a blizzard trying to get to work one morning, you have a big old semi-truck who thinks it's funny to put on the gas, seeing my tiny little Dodge coming his way. But I still made it. I knew how to drive in snow, even in a stick, despite other Canadians not being able to do so. That surprised me. Nonetheless, let's get back to the criminal topic at hand. Because remember, under Brigham Young, he's mounting a royal army, royal priesthood army, to go up against the United States of America. Because he's a terrorist. That's why he overthrew Joseph Smith. And blamed Joseph Smith for all the crimes that he was committing. In a sacred secret, now practiced openly in 1851. And so when the United States was sent in the army to quell Brigham Young's rebellion and terrorist threat letter that he sent to the United States, Brigham Young had to come up with another plot and thus expand in the new territory Mormon settlements so that American citizens could not inhabit the land. That was the whole purpose of this expansion, because they could have just kept in Salt Lake Valley and dominated it, but nope. That was the reason for the expansion, is to possess the whole land that was, for less than a year, the Kingdom of Deseret. They wanted their kingdom back for the sole purpose of overthrowing the American government. Joseph Smith's doctrines were altered specifically to emphasize this. Hymns were written. O Babylon, we bid thee farewell. We're going to the mountains of Ephraim to dwell. And so, yes, the Babylon band clip that Nelson talked about, the church believes that the United States of America is Babylon. And so Nelson, by saying the Babylon band in conference when he gave me the death threat, is referring to the United States that needs to be overthrown. This is why Nelson in 2019 had the temple changed, making women believe that he's softening up to allow women more freedom and more independence with a voice in the church. It was a cover, and you fell for it. He changed the law of chastity, which allows now for the return of polygamy. He took out the laws of the United States, which the church was forced to put in way back in the beginning because of the Edmunds Act and the Edmunds-Tucker Act. Did I say that the Edmunds Act was in 1882? Hundreds of Mormons, along with President Taylor, were locked up. Lock them up. Lock them up. They were locked up. In 1882, previous to that, Taylor had a new edition of the Doctrine and Covenants. We don't have that. Why don't we have that? It seems like we should have that. If a president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had a new edition with his included Doctrine and Covenants passages, shouldn't we have that? Why don't we have that? Because he put in polygamy. The United States forced the church to remove them. That's why they didn't remove the Section 132, because the church deceived them and lied to them, saying it was Joseph who wrote it. The United States was fooled, not knowing about the original Doctrine and Covenants of 1835, which had a chapter on monogamy. Again, the Church of Brigham Young framed Joseph. That's what they did the whole time when they were in the church in the first place. They, the Danites, led by Brigham Young, caused the criminal actions that Joseph kept getting blamed for and arrested for. And who ran the church in Joseph's absence? Yeah, Brigham Young kept muscling his way to lead the church, especially after the coup in 1838, the leadership coup. No historian talks about that, only me. You know, there will be people who say, oh, the Danites. Who was the leader of the Danites? Everybody's guessing. Oh, it was so-and-so who confessed to being the leader. It was this other person who also confessed to being the leader. You have no clue about anything. It was a hierarchy. It was a military operation. Brigham Young was the head, and there were soldiers or lieutenants, similar to a crime family, that patterned it after Brigham Young's organization. The early 1900s. That's when the American Crime Organization was developed, and they patterned their leadership pattern after the churches, after Brigham Young. This is lost from American history. And so, yeah, under Taylor, the 70s were more regulated. As well as some other stuff that was done away with. I think the High Council was downgraded to just at the stake level under Taylor. I believe that was him. You'd think it would say, but I don't see it here. They have to keep that one silent anyway, because if they reveal that Joseph Smith had a High Council, not just local state high councils, that Mormons would begin to question, well, why then was Brigham claiming to be like a high council? You mean he was just in charge of missionary work, preaching the gospel? So how does he get those keys to be the leader of the church? Yeah, so the Edmunds Act, 1882. So it looks like he and Mormons were arrested in 1882 after the implementation, unless they're leaving that out. In 1882, the United States Congress enacted the Edmunds Act, which declared polygamy to be a felony. We'd have to confirm this to make sure it was just for polygamy and not for the citizenship of converts from Europe. That is Congress that delegates citizenship, immigration status. not Brigham Young. We can check. Because the Edmunds-Tucker Act is available online. Edmunds Act, Library of Congress. Digital ID. Do I need to... Oh, there it is. Transcript, PDF. Edmunds Act. Cha-ching! Church history, primary source document obtained. It's 142 pages. It was bound into a book. It's got the Library of Congress number on it. Alrighty. And it is now mine for the record of the people. Primary source. I should have checked, shouldn't I? Well, I've got this one up. And as much as there will probably be bombshells, additional bombshells, by going over it, we will withhold for this video. Save it for another day. Although, next week is the last day of my internet. So yes, hundreds of Mormon men and women were arrested and imprisoned. And so there were thousands of Mormons. And so the reason why only hundreds is because of the expansion. Oh, they were inspired to escape justice. God. See, we're coming to that. And so it doesn't say when. It doesn't say when he got out, but it is clear that he was out before 1885. When he got out, he moved into the Gardo house alone with his sister Agnes to avoid prosecution and to avoid showing preference to any one of his families and his wives. No, guys, no. Because his statement here tells the real story. It's amazing how Mormons can see it, read it, put it in the article, and it just goes over their head so that they can justify Taylor's behavior, imposing behavior on Taylor. Taylor was doing this to protect the Mormons. He was doing this as loyalty to God. Jesus, created by Constantine. By 1885, he and his counselors were forced to withdraw from public view. That's like saying that a shooting that occurs, and we've had a major one out here in West Valley City by the high school, that the shooters were the victims and were forced to flee and hide from those wrongly trying to lock them up. for their religious freedom. How twisted are these Mormons who put this in here and worded it this way? To live in the underground. Already, what they have now done was expose that under Brigham Young, who was the underground under Joseph Smith, had his own underground with his underground. It's just hilarious. And we're frequently on the move to avoid arrest. And so John Taylor's last public sermon in 1885. Here it is. I would like to obey and place myself in subjection to every law of man. What then? Oh my God! The President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints saying, what good is it to obey the laws of man? The divinely inspired Constitution, what good is it? It continues. Remember this as you're looking at his picture in jail for being a criminal without his makeup. Saying these kinds of things with all the good Mormon missionaries around him. I don't know the identities. I would have to do some research on that. I can't find anybody who identifies each of the people in the prison photos, but yeah, they're all dressed in their suits. Am I to disobey the law of God? Has any man a right to control my conscience, my religious freedom, or your conscience? No man has a right to do it. He just justified being a criminal, using God as his excuse. A president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints used God to justify being a criminal. So let's all go to the Article of Faith, number 12 of Joseph Smith's. We believe in being subject to kings, presidents, rulers, and magistrates in obeying, honoring, and sustaining the law. Now, was the United States wrong to lock them up for polygamy? Is it a religious freedom? The answer is no. Polygamy is only required when there's an extermination of the human race event. There was no need for polygamy. They used it to build an army to go up against the United States of America. It was not God's law. God's law was monogamy. It was from the beginning. It was until John Taylor assassinated Hiram Smith and Willard Richards shot Joseph in the back. Mormons try to push the lie about what happened to those those mobbers who murdered Joseph and Hiram. And they, try to create a scenario of how they all died mysteriously of horrible pain and suffering. Willard Richards died 10 years later. John Taylor was locked up and then died from congestive heart failure, was it? Would be under death, I guess. Died on July 25th, 1887, a date which will live in infamy, of congestive heart failure in Kaysville, Utah Territory. That's the underground. Kaysville is the underground. Oh, hilarious. Hilarious. And so, is the Constitution divinely inspired or not? What does the rights of life, liberty, and property mean? Now, yes, I know the original Constitution said that blacks were not full human. Women were not even involved. Oh, women? Oh, they want to be human too? The redactor of the author of Paul says that women should keep silent. Oh, just in church? No, I think we should expand that. So those amendments were put in to make sure that everybody means everybody of the human race, not just the white Europeans. And so everybody is to have rights to life, liberty, and property. Now, yes, there's the TV show Polygamous Family. The wives all claim that they chose to be polygamous wives, and there is a polyamory thing going on. As there was a TV show on it, but Mormons were practicing it here as well to avoid criminal prosecution. And there is no law for against orgies. There is no law against going to a bar and picking up a stranger for the night. There is no law, well, there is a law on Utah's books for cruising State Street, picking up a stranger for the night. Or in the other towns, there are Mormons who do that. I knew them in the singles ward. The one woman had a kid who said, "Oh yeah, I used to cruise such and such a street in such and such a town." Can't remember now. And I'd take them back to my apartment. And you didn't get paid? No. And you claim to be a prostitute? Yeah. Well, then you're not a prostitute. You're just a whore. There are definitions. Prostitution means you sell your body. And back in the days before women were given the amendment, they were property. And as property, you can only have one. Despite the rampant immorality of cheating spouses that was going on. There were some laws in some states, I guess, that went after that, but for the most part, no. The only way to originally go after such infidelity was to accuse your wife of being a witch. She's a witch. She enchanted that other man, refusing to have sex with me. And this is what people don't seem to understand, is that children are supposed to be protected because they're minors, and as such they're not adults. They are not subject to the rights of life, liberty, and freedom except through their guardians or parents. They are required for their rights of life, liberty, and property, but in and of themselves have no rights unless they violate their rights, and then the government steps in to remove the kids from the dangerous situation. But women were treated in a similar manner. They were not considered human. They did not have rights, only through their husband. And the husband was in charge of them. And so if a man were to possess more than one wife, that was a crime. And so that's what Brigham was, and John was trying to claim, is that God said that women are supposed to be property, that women need to be involved in polygamous relationships with the leaders to justify the raising of an army to go up against America. And this whole concept that we now have did not exist back then, that women have the right to choose to be polygamous. You know, yeah, now they do. In the United States in 1978, after the church gave blacks the right to have the priesthood and go through the temple, get their tithing money's worth, to be worthy, then consented later that year to repeal the Edmunds-Tucker Act. And so then, 2019, Nelson puts back polygamy in, preparing the way for the destruction of America, which is in the works right now. Completely doing an underground movement as they are seeking to overthrow America right now. Whoops, didn't want to take that down. So Doctrine and Covenants, section 29, is what I was looking at last night. That triggered this. Oh, the great I am. I was going to do a video on that. I was thinking about that yesterday, correcting that. It's hilarious. It is claimed to be the translation, I am that I am. And it's just like Constantine's Jesus. Constantine created a new Greek word with no definition other than it's not real. That's the definition. Amusian. Unreal, not existing. This is Jesus. He's historical now. He's a historical character in what's now going to be called the Gospels, rather than apocalyptic literature. And so, yes, Jews pulled this stunt with their author of the Torah, where Moses in the burning bush has said, well, the Mormons aren't going to believe me if I tell them I'm the man like Moses for the latter days. And he says, well, tell them my original name under Joseph Smith. Amen. But it's not Amun, but close. You have to have a person who's deciphered Paleo-Hebrew to reveal the truth of it unto you, because Nelson ain't no translator. So let's see, we're in section 29. Yeah, that's right. It was because I was watching End of Days with Arnold Schwarzenegger last night and was talking about Book of Revelations, and so I tried to find that passage, and that's not the way it's worded, so it was his translation version that he was reading from. But I found the one in section 29. Let's see. Yeah, in verse 22 it talks about it. And this is a different doctrinal understanding in Mormonism, as Mormons believe that the millennial reign of 1,000 years, that after the 1,000 years, then men will begin to deny their God. Then I will spare the earth but for a little season. Lucifer will be unleashed somehow, and wreak havoc to try to take the throne right there at the end. And then the end shall come. 1,000 years are ended. So maybe Schwarzenegger was reading from the Doctrine and Covenants. But this passage then brought my attention to verse 21, right up above it. And the great and abominable church, which is the whore, apparently not getting paid. Whores get paid. It's just, I think it's called a slut. You're just a slut if you don't get paid. Shall be cast down by devouring fire, according as it is spoken by the mouth of Ezekiel the prophet. And there's no footnote by Ezekiel. And we can check to see if they corrected this with the 2009 editions. But the footnote is under devouring fire. It continues, who spoke of these things which have not come to pass, but surely must, as I live, I am lives, for abominations shall not reign. What is the abomination of desolation again? It's now been exposed. It's going on 3 years now. And the church refuses to shut down the church to save Mormon lives. Yesterday's numbers was a result from church. 12,500. It's getting worse because the church won't shut down. Nelson was frustrated, and Herbert recognized that frustration. He recognized the extortion threat to open up early so the church can open up again. And they came right out and said, we're not closing again. No matter how bad it gets, we're not closing. And the church, yeah, they're now saying, yeah, we're open. See how the church is open during the abomination of desolation. And Mormons still don't make the connection. They hear him. They know what's going on. People are getting sick, hospitalized, and dead around them. And whoop, They're clueless that we are in the latter days, when Nelson even came out in October and confessed, oh yeah, and by the way, we're in the latter days. Babylon banned! Evil! Yeah, you're projecting. It's you. You're the Babylon band. It's not the United States of America. Because it's a religion. Section 1, verse 16. 14 and 15 refers to religious activities. And then says Babylon, the whore. This is the religion. The great and abominable church. And Nelson turned it on America. So that it's America that is to be cast down by devouring fire. When it's them. And I don't understand if this was part of their plot 200 years ago. Yeah, we're going to build up the church, we're going to possess land all around the world, get filthy rich, have a massive army, and then we're just going to destroy it. I don't understand that. If that's the case, if it's something from God, like scriptures tell stories in parable form, apocalyptic literature form, of that, Sodom and Gomorrah, for example, that's a latter-day apocalyptic literature story. And I did this with the Exodus event in the Book of Mormon, Exodus Patterns of the Book of Mormon, a 7-hour series. But this is why I wanted to stay, is because I wanted to help rescue Mormons during this event. And I have no idea when it will occur. It would have been nice if there would have been something that clicked into my head, like 1,000 years being something to click into my head, but it hasn't. I just know what MAGA has planned with this election, and the very next year in January when they're put in office to overthrow America completely and finally. And so it's not 2024 that the news is all perpetuating. Oh no, we need to fear 2024. You need to fear this year. You need to prevent a MAGA sweep. And nobody is wanting you to know about that for some strange reason. And so, yeah, let's follow the waiting for lightning to strike. So the footnote takes us to Exodus 38, verse 22, and it's also referred earlier. That's strange. Why are you doing that, guys? So yeah, they most likely would have fixed this problem, although it was our group that brought it to the attention, and the triple was already finished by then. So they may have duplicated this link on the same page, because it's stupid. You put it at the beginning of the reference, and you let people do that. But this is why Mormons pull scriptures out of context, is because of where the footnoting is. So, Exodus 38:22. And so I followed the link. And remember, it's the great and abominable church that will be destroyed by fire. Desolating fire, devastating fire, or whatever it said. I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood, and I will rain upon him and upon his bands. Nelson think he was being clever, calling it the Babylon Band. Or was he referring to the Nicolaitanian band? Because I had done the video and was curious about what band he was referring to. The secret band of Gadianton is the most likely one, because he's not that smart with Mormon stuff. And upon the many people that are with him, an overflowing rain, and great hailstones, fire, and brimstone. That doesn't seem to be the prophecy of Ezekiel. So I kept going, because here Bruce R. McConkie put in Gog and Magog destroyed. For 7 years, no, this is something else, but I was curious. 7 years. For 7 years they burn the weapons of war. For 7 months they bury the dead. Then comes the supper of the great God and the continued gathering of Israel. Remember, everybody knew the date of this event. Everybody. 8 April 2024. So Gog and Magog being destroyed is before 8 April 2024. Nelson is purposely purging the Church of Mormons, not just with death, but financial crisis, and by atrocities spoken of racism, sexism, bigotry, neglecting the poor. He had the billionaire withdraw from the church because the church isn't managing their finances correctly, criminally. And James Huntsman and myself, Kay Birmingham for Gaddy, Sister Gaddy. And that's what I can see the reason for purging, because white supremacists want to purge and purify to get only the purest of pure for their organization. But it's a dangerous thing to do, because you run the risk of destroying your organization. Because people will turn on you. Well, you're not pure. You're not a pure German Hitler. He wasn't. and so, yeah, this concept of white supremacy used to be wrongly called Caucasian, and it's still wrongly referenced today. You know, I've seen government documents and other documents asking if I'm Caucasian, not allowing for white. Which, again, why are you wanting to know my segregation identity, my ethnic identity? Because, again, I did the video for Martin Luther King Jr. in which race is the human race. It's not black and white. That's ethnic group. And Gog and Magog originates with Josephus talking about Alexander the Great. So this reveals an anachronism in Ezekiel. Uh-oh. You mean it's not an original source document? Bring up Gog and Magog. Gog is an individual, and Magog is his land. Jewish eschatology viewed Gog and Magog as enemies to be defeated by the Messiah. And who's the Jewish Messiah? Well, Jesus, obviously. Which would usher in the age of Messiah, the millennial reign of peace. Christianity's interpretation is more starkly apocalyptic, making Gog and Magog here indicated nations rather than individuals. So, yeah, it's allies of Satan. The conflation of Gog and Magog with the legend of Alexander and the Iron Gates. The legend of Gog and Magog and let's find the right paragraph. A legend was attached to Gog and Magog by the time of the Roman period, that the gates of Alexander were erected by Alexander the Great to repel the tribe. Romanized Jewish historian Josephus knew them as the nation described from Magog, the Japhethite. Yeah, it's one of the children of Japheth, of Noah. That's the European country. And so this is Josephus talking about the myth, legend of Alexander the Great erecting the gates of Alexander to repel Gog and his Magog nation. But you can see the Jews understood it more correctly. Not a Christianity, though. Jesus is going to destroy Israel and convert them to Christianity. Those wicked heathens who murdered the Christ. So you see the white supremacy, Caucasian, Gog and Magog. Where's the Caucasus Mountains? Even Islam screws it up. Alexander the Great. Yep, that's where it is. So it's from the legend. The first century Jewish historian Josephus identified the Gog and Magog people as the Scythians, horse-riding barbarians from around the Don and the Sea of Azov. Josephus recounts the tradition that Gog and Magog were locked up by Alexander the Great behind iron gates in the Caspian Mountains, generally identified with the Caucasus Mountains. Caucasian. The legend must have been current in contemporary Jewish circles by this period, coinciding with the beginning of the Christian era. Several centuries later, this material was vastly elaborated in the Apocalypse of Pseudo-Methodius and Alexander romance. And so, Caucasian, coming from the Caucasus Mountains, has been debunked simply because they weren't all white. They were a spectrum rainbow from white to dark brown. And so it's incorrect to say that I'm Caucasian. But the Caucasus Mountains, they're in Europe, are what's being referred to here as Joseph Smith is referring to this chapter, not chapter 38. except for the bands part. This is the great and abominable church. Magog is the great and abominable church, according to Joseph Smith. Gog is the Christ of the great and abominable church, the false Christ, the false prophet. How do I know this? I've been going over it with you with this one, of which everything talks about him. That's the Jewish Messiah for the latter days, which comes from their Torah, Deuteronomy 18, starting in verse 15. The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me. Unto him ye shall hearken. And Joseph Smith gets from the Book of Mormon in 2 Nephi chapter 3 that Joseph is the man like Moses, the Christ, that he tells us is the identity in his Joseph Smith history in 1838. That man was the Christ. That's Joseph. Joseph is the founding Christ of Mormonism. Yeah, we're not Christian. And yet, the church is anti-Jewish. It's just hilariously evil. How dumb they are. But here's the false prophet. But the prophet of the latter days, which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of Jesus, other gods, even that prophet shall die. And Joseph Smith knew about this. It's not vague. He makes it very clear. He repeats that in section 85, which asterisk President Joseph Fielding Smith Sr. did a whole book for his presidency statement on this, saying, nope, it's no longer, it's null and void. He repented, so move along, nothing to see here. Verse 7, I, the Lord God, will send one mighty and strong, holding the scepter of power. And if you don't understand Egyptian pharaohs, who were Melchizedek's, priesthood of Ammon, they had a scepter and a shepherd's crook. And technically the scepter was the flail, but they also had an actual scepter of power or staff with a serpent on the top of it, like Moses had. And then verse 8. This is why lightning strikes is in the description below lately. While that man who was called of God and appointed, that putteth forth his hand to steady the ark of God, well, that's the president of the church. Okay, this ought to be good. Faith promoting. No need to delete it from Scripture, because it's not faith promoting, it's faith promoting. Shall fall by the shaft of death, like as a tree that is smitten by the vivid shaft of lightning. Lightning will strike. Good old Judas Priest. Perfect. This is Gog, that Joseph Smith is referring to. The false Christ who comes out of his organization, who usurped it, who had him murdered, from which the latter-day Messiah, of whom he talks about, is to come through. And he's not supposed to die. But there is that scenario Abinadi, I went over that in the Exodus patterns. So, I don't understand, Mormons. It's right here for us, all of us, to see. I know there's an underground movement belief system of this. The Mormons know of it, and they've heard other people talking about it, but none of them are know what this means. Nobody has the knowledge that I do to tell you about this. And next week I lose my internet. Countdown is on. And destruction is coming. Did I just get myself rug burn on my sock? Oh. But now I've got wounds on my feet. I've had the wounds on my feet with the pollution here in Utah. Causes massive dry skin irritation from the pollution, the poison in the air. That's what rashes are. They try to say, it's just, dry skin. No, it's pollution, poison. That's why we rash up. It's from poison. They all downplay it as if it's no big deal. And so, yes, I had the hands wounded as well as my feet wounded. The house of my friends. And so, yeah, the Brigham's organization are the Europeans, Caucasians, white supremacists, who want Jesus pushed, even though they're going to come out with Lucifer. And then founded their land of Magog, Gog and Magog. The great and abominable church. The white supremacist group. So, yeah, which church do you want to be a part of, Mormons? Are you eating, drinking, and be marrying because tomorrow you're going to be prophesied to die? There's a sign in the heavens. I'll put this at the end of the video as a reward for those who watch this all the way to the end. I need to write it down to make sure I get it put in. Put in a crab pick. Kim's at the door. It's a sign for the day before my internet goes down. The Cancrid, I think they're called, meteor showers, are now in the beehive cluster of Cancer, the crab constellation. The moon is the symbol of religion. The left eye of Horus is at the crab star, Akrab, which is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The fall. Went over this with you for last Sunday's lesson. And so the sign means the great and abominable church will fall. Stars falling from heaven. But it's cutting it close for me. Nonetheless, I show you the picture. It's a sign in the heavens. I would love it to be saved so that I can continue to live. But And I'm being told, wait on the Lord. But I want to be able to do something. I can't do anything, and it's frustrating that I can't do anything to save myself. I can't get through to anybody. So, here we go.